Hi everyone and welcome to Festive Tech Calendar 2021. Big thanks to all organizers of this event that's happening third time in a row. FestiveTechCalendar.com is the address where all these great speakers are gathering to deliver some high spirit talks, and I would like to mention that the team that put all together is thank you everyone for doing this work, and especially Azure Greg. I will just make an announcement about the charity of the event, which is listed on festivetechcalendar.com website. If you have a chance, please visit that website and click on Just Giving page, which will open you a giving page, and the choice of the giving is Girls Who Code. So please donate, and if you can, to reach the goal and support this great event. Thank you all. So that said, I'm going to switch back to the slides, and today's presentation that I'm going to do is going to be about all about Azure Bicep config files and why to use them and how to customize them to increase your productivity. We will also look into the Azure Bicep build pipeline, how you can actually automate that thing as well, and get the power of Bicep config file to customize your configuration files and your environment. Okay, a little bit about myself. I have been MCT since 2007 and had a chance to learn and teach about Azure since 2016. I run the Cloud Marathoner blog post, which you see here, and I share cloud and Microsoft Azure journey details and encourage everyone to share their useful tips and bits. I'm an active core team member of the Cloud Launch and Learn organization, and I help there with organizing events, presenting sessions on Azure, moderating, or helping with Ideathon, Cloud Marathon, or other events. Well, enough about myself. I would like to know more about you, who is listening and trying to learn about Azure Bicep. What are your interests? And please type that in this YouTube channel comments. I'll be glad to reach back. You can also reach me on Twitter handler that you see on the screen, or just get connected with me on LinkedIn. Would be very happy to help you. Next, let's look into today's agenda, what we are going to present. Of course, as we are talking about Azure Bicep, we'll have very short introduction into that language. Then we'll look into why to learn this new language, Azure Bicep, and then we'll look into the Bicep configuration file, how to get started with that. After that, we'll look into best practices with Bicep, and we'll look into a couple of demos and conclude our session. Okay, let's start with the first one here. What is Azure Bicep? As you see on the screen, there are a couple bullets that are presented, but when you speak about Azure Bicep, keep in mind that it's a new declarative domain-specific language for provisioning Azure resources. And the purpose of Azure Bicep is just simplify the resource creation and management experience with a cleaner syntax and more code reuse. This new language aims to make it easier to write infrastructure as code for developers and DevOps engineers that typically create ARM templates targeting the Azure Resource Manager APIs. So with Azure ARM templates, it's a templating engine, while Azure ARM template is a templating engine for you. You can declare resources using the JSON. On the other hand, Azure Bicep is the way to define those resources as a code and use the power of the language. Okay, but in any cases, I would like to mention that the Azure Bicep language itself is transpiled to standard ARM template JSON files, meaning that whatever you can do in ARM JSON templates. You can also accomplish that with Bicep language, as it is a transparent abstraction on top of ARM template as well as on top of ARM Azure Resource Manager layer. All right, that's it. Let's look into why Bicep language and what are the basically advantages of learning this new language. So first I will start with the notion of its Bicep language brings this easy to understand and maintain coding experience that's very good. That would give advantage, especially for the new learners who are trying to learn how to maintain Azure resources with ease. Second, Azure Bicep comes with day one support from Azure ecosystem, and any API, any service that get released on Azure actually is going to be right away available on Azure Bicep as well as ARM templates, but that's not the case if you are using third-party tools like Terraform. Then again, Azure Bicep is a transparent abstraction over ARM. It has awesome tooling in Visual Studio Code, and it has its own extension, which I'm going to show you. It comes with clean code syntax. It has code reusability and modularity built in. We have deep integration with Azure, and it comes with pre-flight validations to make sure that when you have a deployment of your scripts, of your resources, they do not get failed in the middle of deployment, and you can, before starting the deployment of your Azure resources, you can have this ability to go and check the status of existing resources on the subscription or on the scope where you are deploying. That will give you another peace of mind, validation kind of security of validating your deployment before actual doing that. Next, it doesn't need any state management. Azure is going to provide that state management of your Bicep language, and as well as Azure resources using the built-in functionalities. And it comes with production support starting from the version 0.3, and you can rely on a regular Microsoft channel to get your questions answered. So I don't want to just go through the slides. I would like to switch to the Visual Studio Code now, and here we'll start with a very simple file called minimum-storage.bicep. But before diving into the code, I would like you to show the GitHub repository from where you can see all this code and basically use as you need them. To see that, what you would need is just to go and navigate to this GitHub repo. And here it is. You can navigate to this GitHub repo and use this code. It's all here. And if you have any suggestions or any issues, just go and open a new issue. I'll be glad to help with that. So here's the code base, and everything is here for you to help in your Azure Bicep learning journey. And the repo name is Learn Bicep. That's the name of the repo. Okay, I'm switching back to the Visual Studio Code now. All right, we are back in Azure in VS Code. And here we have this minimum-storage bicep. As you see, it's a declaration of a storage account with the name, location. It has a type of the storage, which is V2. It's a standard locally redundant storage, and has some tags. So pretty simple to understand and see. Now, in terms of reuse, I'm going to switch to another file, which is located under the samples 7-deploy. Here it is. All right, I'm going to switch to this file now to show some modularity and parameters. So in this file, we see that it has a separate target scope declaration, which stands for the scope of this deployment, which is, in this case, it's a subscription. it defines some parameters and other username and the resource group app service names are defined. Then we have a secure parameter with a secure declaration on top. After that, actually, I would like to draw your attention on modules. So here, as you see, there's an app service that is coming from this modules slash app services.bicep. So this app services.bicep is actually another bicep file which is located in our VS Code folder, modules folder. And if we just navigate, you can easily navigate there by pressing on Control and clicking on this link. Now we navigated to that app service.bicep file, which has declaration of app service plan and as well as the web app itself, which is using the app service plan. Okay, if we are going to go back to that again to the file, then within this file we also have declaration of resource group and other things. But as you see here, we have a number of files, and you can easily get lost in that. If you didn't create this file, it might be a little bit confusing, and especially if the number of lines grow over time. So Azure Bicep team did an awesome thing by introducing this Azure Bicep extension, which I'm going to show you now. You just click on extensions, type the bicep. Here it is. It will come over here. So once you install this bicep extension, the cool thing that you would see is actually on the right side here, you would see there is a visualizer, template visualizer. And you can actually use this template visualizer, which is, again, it's here. To be precise, it's the second one from the left. And we are going to click on it. So once we click on the bicep visualizer, we get another screen here. And this screen actually visualizes all the resources, resource groups that are part of this bicep file. And it's very pretty nice picture in terms of what to expect from your deployment, what are the components, and you can use this by zooming in, zooming out, the way how you wish. But I would like you to know that here you have this functionality which is very handy, so use that whenever you see it appropriate. All right, that said, we looked into a number of productivity features here, how you can actually manage existing bicep file, and I will just we are going to look at some more demos during this presentation. I'm going to jump back into the slides now. All right, we are continuing from the place where we left. Next, let's look actually at bicep configuration files, because that's the main kind of topic that I would like everybody to get familiar with. First of all, before starting that, let's look into what is this configuration file is and why would you add one into your project, and what are the default configurations you need to be aware about, and you can use them, or you can switch on or off them based on your project needs. So to start with this, first we need to mention that to use the bicep linter and the configuration file, you need to make sure that your Azure Bicep version is 0.4 or later one. Otherwise, that feature is not going to be there. And how you can check that? In order to check this, you would need to go fire up your terminal, as I did now, and just type AZ bicep and then type the version. So once you type this command, you should see the response in few seconds here. And here we go. So in my case, I type this command and we get this response saying that our version is 0.4.1008, which is 0.4 basically. All right, so once we have this, it means we can use the bicep config file. But where it is? So if you in this learn bicep repository, if you scroll under this, I put that on a root folder basically, so that it applies to all bicep files. It's called bicepconfig.json. If we click on it, we will end up with some rules, and you see we have a number of rules here, and they have some levels of warning. We have some error. You can also switch off these rules, which I'm going to show you. So for example, here we have a rule saying that no unused variables. So if you have any unused variable, it's gonna show warning. So let's switch back to an example storage bicep file, and here as you see we have parameter which is actually has this yellow squiggly line, and if you click on the light here, bulb, it will tell you that there's a way you can disable this linter rule. We are not going to do that at this time, but I'm going to switch again on this, click again on that squiggly line under the location, and as you see it says parameter location is declared but never used. That's the reason why it is highlighted. It's a warning. If you want to learn more about each of these rules, I'm going to click on this resource, and you can click on your own, and what will happen is it's going to open a web browser. Let me show you that. On a web browser, it will take you to these linter rules, which are located here under the linter rules. And as you may see, for no unused variables one, this is the rule that's actually presented here. But if you want to learn more about this linter, you just type Azure Bicep linter, and you can read about what is the expected version of the bicep needs to be in your environment, plus what are the rules and what you can get out of these rules, and what type of problems you can solve or fix. There are certain things that it can auto fix, like for example, if you have concatenated string and you would like to convert that into interpolated one, it's easily done through auto fixes, and then you can use the same thing from your PowerShell. All right, I'm going to switch back to the VS Code, and what we are going to do this time, we are going to switch off this rule so that we don't get this warning for some reason. Let's do that. I'm going to say disable linter rule, and it's actually gone. As you see, it's not there. And what happened actually is in our bicep config JSON file here, I'm going to click on it. So what happened is that if we go and look here, our unused parameter has been switched off. So it took the value of off. So if you look at all available values here, you would see that it has 4 values. It has error, it has info, you can switch it off, and you can put warning. So we have 4 options. In our case, we are going to switch back to its previous default value, which is warning. All right, so once we put on a warning and save this file, we are going to switch back to that minimum-storage.bicep file, our demo file, and here we see that it's back with the warning and everything is in place. All right, okay, that's it. Let's look at some more examples and see how we can actually put that in work, as well as what are the let's look into how these parameters and how this bicep config is going to affect your bicep files, right? So because warning, if we go and come to this file and let's build a JSON representation of this minimum storage bicep. To do that, we are going to go to the terminal and we are going to type az bicep. Then we need to navigate to the az bicep build. Then we need to navigate to the file where it exists, where this file is. In our case, it is under the modules folder, and the name is minimum-storage bicep. So once we have that here, we are going to execute this command, and it should create an ARM template named as minimum-storage.json, which is going to be the representation of it in JSON form. So now it's getting executed at this point. And as you see, it's actually getting some yellow warnings. And reason is it says that, hey, we have this, you have custom bicep config file found, and there is like on a location parameter, it is declared but never used. And if we go and look at our folder, you would see that a new file .json has been created, and this is the basically going to be your representation. It's going to be your ARM template representation of that JSON file that get created with these yellow files. Now, this is all good, but I want you to show how you can prevent, let's say, certain things from happening. For example, you may have this rule in your company or within the development team where you want to make sure that if there's unused parameter like the one that we see here, then you would actually create a warning, not warning, but you create an error and you don't allow this bicep file get deployed or get built. Okay, so if you want to do that, what we are going to do is we are going to switch to we are going to open our bicep config file again. In this case, it's over here. All right, and then under these rules, we'll find our unused parameter, no unused params. And here instead of warning, now we are going to switch this level to error because we want to prevent any bicep file that has unused parameter. We just want to make sure it's clear. If there's a parameter, it's used within the file. All right. So once we did that, look at this thing. So you would see that under the modules, we get this red line. Why? Because once we click on it, now instead of yellow line here, we see an error. We see a red squiggly line. And what it says, if you navigate on that, it would say that parameter location is declared, but never used. All right. So that's the reason why you get this red line. But let's say you didn't remove that, and instead you say, okay, that's fine. I just want to build this file and get my JSON representation. At this point, if you run the same command that we ran just, a minute or two ago, now let's see what we'll get. I'm going to execute the same command. And in few seconds, we get this, as you see, we get this error actually. We don't get our JSON file output. It says that what we see is that there's a custom linter configuration with bicep config file, and you have this error on unused parameter location. That's why it's not, succeeded. And here we see there's error, and when we look at the at our files, we see that .json representation of bicep file minimum-storage did not created. It didn't get generated. All right, that's it. This is basically main part of it. I just want to mention that if you have couple bicep config files, then the one that's located within the folder where execution happens, that's going to be that bicep config file is going to override the global one. All right, so you can have more than one bicep config files within your project. All right, that's it. I'm going to remove this unused parameter because there is no need on having one. And next, what we are going to do is we are going to look into a different way how we can actually deal with bicep. And to do that, I'm going to switch back to the repo file, which is located again, this repo called learn bicep in GitHub. You can navigate there and okay, let me do it once more. You can navigate to this URL over here, and look into the learn bicep repo. So once we open that, you would see that within the actions here, we have GitHub actions, and we have actually 3 here, and one of them is deploy-main.site. And if you look at this deploy-main.site, you would see there's certain actions going on here, and if you want to look inside into what is the actual YAML file that's used for building the bicep, you would see that it's actually get kicked off. The build get kicked off on branches called main or release, and then it's going to deploy that into the resource group called play website. And then of course, you know, there's and everything is coming out of the based on the environment name and variable name. You get everything deployed from the from this place, okay, called deploy, from deployment folder. So here basically we have our, under deploy folder we have main.bicep, and this is the one that get deployed based on the environment type, and that environment type is declared on top of our YAML file here. Let's look at that, and it's going to be deployed as a test. All right, so let's see how this thing is going to execute. So while this getting executed, let's see what we should see. I'm going to switch back to the Visual Studio Code and open the, under the deploy folder here, I'm going to open the main.bicep. And here we see that this bicep file is actually taking the environment type. It can be test, dev, or prod, and then it's actually declares a resource name suffix using the unique string from resource group, and then it's actually have this play-website app service name and as well as service plan. And then actually it has a storage account name that should start with this that start with the name pystg, which is play storage. And then of course it has config file that's declared here, that's mapped to different SKUs and resources of your app service plan. All right, and then actual deployment happens of your app service plan, of your application inside and storage account. But just to see what we should expect, we can always go and click on this Bicep Visualizer, right? And Bicep Visualizer will tell us that, hey, you know, you're going to get this four resources deployed. You'll get your storage account, you'll get an app service, web app service with app service plan and application inside. All right, so let's see how it will work in action. So in order to make this work, I'm going to of course go and make some change on this file. So let's see, but let's see what we have here. Git status. All right, we have certain changes here. We have changed on bicep config file where we made some changes. We have some changes on the storage account as well as 7-deploy module. So we are going to also, we have to make some changes here on main bicep as well, but you can skip it. However, just to be sure, we can put another comment and say for a test build. All right, we can remove that at any time, but we want to make sure there's a change on the main.bicep file. All right, so once we did that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check in this file and make sure it deployed. But before kicking off the deployment, we need to make sure the following actually happens. Okay, so where we are now is we looked in some Azure Bicep best practices, and now we are looking into the demo where we are going to redeploy this main.bicep file, and we looked into bicep config and the rules that by default comes within your configuration, and as well as where you can get more detailed information about each config role within the Microsoft documentation. All right, now we're looking, let's switch back again to the Visual Studio Code. And before starting with Visual Studio Code, I would like you to show my Azure environment. As you see, I have a list of resource groups here, and Play website is a resource group that has no resources here. But before, a couple minutes before doing this recording, I made some deployments here. So I just want to show you that these are the deployments that went through. However, currently we don't have any resource. Okay, so what should ideally happen is that if we make a good deployment and this main.bicep go through with the build and validation, it should create Azure resources under our Play website resource group. It should create 4 Azure resources. All right, to do that, what we are going to do next is we are going to add all these files into the repo, and we'll say we'll commit all these changes with the name, test the build pipeline. All right, so all change git push. All right, updates were rejected because remote control. All right, as it's always the case, it didn't go through because we have to fetch the latest from what we have. Let's look at git status, and we have 1 and 3 different commits each respectively. All right, so we have some issue here. Git pull. So let's git pull and see if we auto merging, and we get a conflict. Great. We get a conflict here, so let's resolve the conflict. It looks that we have conflict on bicep.config JSON, so I'm going to just click on that and try to resolve this conflict. So here we are going to accept incoming changes. All right, just to keep it simple, and hopefully we have everything in place. So we have this one. Let's make sure we have all the, oh, we have one extra, I believe. Let's see if all compiles well. Now it seems fine. So let's check this change, and fingers crossed, just to make sure that everything is going to play nicely. Git status, git add, git commit, fix, merge, issue. All right, now let's see what happened in our git. So it says you can push. There are 2 commits. Let's make git push. All right, seems fine. CLS git status. Okay, it looks like everything get pushed. Now, if you remember it, the build needs to happen on our main branch. And to do that, we can switch back to our, we can do that visually just to make sure that for demo purposes, everything looks as it expects. So we'll go to the learn bicep GitHub here. We reload, and we see that there is something ready on deployment. We just need to compare pull and request. We'll say, test build for the demo, and we are going to create this pull request. All right, it's going to run some check. So before it's running this check, I'm going to switch back to our Azure portal again and refresh this just to make sure that under our resource group here, we have Play website resource group, and it is empty. Okay, so there's nothing here. So if that's the case, I'm going to switch back to our um, to our GitHub. So some checks haven't completed yet. It's running some security scan, which is good. While it's running this scan, you can grab a coffee or something and enjoy the or look into the Azure Bicep documentation, because this check usually doesn't run that long. But if you want to look into details, you can always click on this and it will tell you now what step it is performing. It's uploading that and it should be done. Yep, looks like it's done. I'm going to go back to pull request, and here's a test build that is started. It will tell how did your check went. It looks like I have some security audit infrastructure to take care of, but in this case I'm going to click on start this merge, and if merge succeeds, in our case looks like it did, it went through, I'm going to switch to actions here. And the reason is I want to look at my deploy.main side pipeline, which get executed. As you see here, it's a build number 60 at this moment. And if I click on it, it's going to show me that, hey, your pipeline went through linting. Everything looks good there. You can also look at the linting steps here. Then it went through the validation step to make sure that's validated, and lastly it's going to the deployment step. So now deployment is actually warming up. I'm going to click on actions again here and click on deploy main site workflow. Okay, so now deployment is actually started. I'm going to switch back to play website and refresh this, and we don't see anything here because it's still probably getting initialized. So I'm going to click instead under the deployments, under the settings into deployments one. And as you see here, we are getting this build on number 30. And you can click on this build number 30 on your portal, and it will show you the progress that's going on here. In our case, it already deployed the component play website, and it's doing the storage account deployment, and it says it's done. So we are going to switch to go to resource groups, and currently we see 2 of the resources, and over time you would see that other ones are also going to appear here. It usually takes some time for all the resources to come here. Again, in the deployments, this is the successful deployment that we kicked off. And within the resource groups, now we see all 4 resources that we initially saw on our Azure Bicep Visualizer, right? That tool. So we see all 4 resources, and if you can click and look at each of them. So I'm going to switch back to our Learn Bicep action. So this deployment actually succeeded. We see that's here. You see certain annotation and messages. So, and if you go to Learn Bicep, I have also a build batch here, just in case if things go wrong, which it does from time to time, then we can know is it passing or not. In addition to that, I want to mention that you have this Azure Bicep blog post that you can rely on if you want to learn a little bit more about how you can integrate Azure Key Vault, or if you want to integrate some Azure Bicep policies into your build and into your infrastructure. You can use these references. All right, that's it. I'm going to switch back now. Our deployment succeeded. So demo went well. And now let's look what we have covered so far. So we looked into what is Azure Bicep language first. We tried to demystify that and make sure we have references. Then we looked into why we learn Azure Bicep language. Then we looked into the Bicep configuration file, where it is and what are the rules, where we can get additional information about the rules. Then we looked into some best practices. We looked into Bicep Visualizer and modules and how we can reuse them. And finally, we looked at certain demos that that came up along well. Now, of course, what's next, right? What we should do in order to learn and get more information in order to use them starting from this new year, from December, and adding this joy of easy Azure Bicep code into our Azure infrastructure. You can learn that again from Learn Bicep GitHub, the one that I just showed. This is the QCR code. You can get connected with me on LinkedIn. You can check the official Bicep project on GitHub, maintained by Microsoft. And you can also visit my blog, thecloudmarathoner.com, and learn more about Azure Bicep. There's also a, let me say, this shameless plug, there's also a LinkedIn course called Azure Bicep Config. Let me show you, there's a LinkedIn course that's dedicated to Azure Bicep, and I'm going to show you that one under the learning here. Okay, I'm navigating to that post that I saw. Here it is. Let it build. So basically, you can go to this Azure Bicep first look. It's a LinkedIn course. You can click on it, and for a given time promotion, there is some free videos you can learn. So I would also advise just to go to that Azure Bicep first look and get your, get basically your feet wet with Azure Bicep, and get much more knowledgeable about that and how you can use. Again, check the Just Giving page, and if you can support this cause, that's going to be wonderful. And again, I wanted to mention that thank you everyone for watching this presentation and being with me all time long for all these 40 something minutes. And I would like to thank all the organizers of the Festive Tech Calendar event. Please visit the site and support the cause, and donate for the girls who code. Take care everyone, and happy holidays. Hope to see you on our next session. Thanks. Happy holidays. Bye.